Does a Bigfoot crap in the woods? Well, not according to Bigfoot. And he says, you know it's true. Because there was that night when you were at the cabin out there in the woods and you left it one night really late because you had to use the outhouse. And rude you didn't even knock before you yanked open that outhouse door. And what did you do? You caught Bigfoot sitting down doing his business. Then he said you were screaming like a girl again, and, well, that just puckered him right up and stopped all the business flowing out of him right then. He said he was so tightly puckered up from all your screaming that he was stopped up for the next 2 days. He also says you owe him an apology and an explanation for your behavior. So go on, write it up. Send it in to contact@buckeyebigfoot.com. Let's hear your side of the outhouse scandal of 2021. Welcome back to Buckeye Bigfoot. Hello there, everyone. Thanks for stopping by. I look forward to seeing all of you every week. Now, as you listen tonight, you may notice a slight difference in my speech. Well, that's because if you remember, I mentioned I had some dental surgery last week. And it was pretty intense. This wasn't some run-of-the-mill having a tooth pulled. This was, we're knocking you out for a few hours and we're doing some very extensive restorative and corrective work on my jaws and some other things. So I still have a lot of stitches all inside along the jawline, and there is more restorative work to be done in the next 2 months. So I'm just asking you to please bear with any oddities or how I might sound. I cannot help it at this point. I can't even fully extend my jaws right now because of all the sutures and all the work being done. So this is just an FYI if I sound funny. My apologies. I'm doing the very best I can, and it's not exactly pain-free to talk right now. And of course, I know that there's always some little trolls out there ready to just start saying some awful things if I make a lisping sound or anything like that because I cannot open my jaws very wide. Go on, knock yourself out with the nastiness. Let's show the world what you're really like, because it says everything about you and nothing about me. But actually, the world won't probably see it, because that's why I have moderators. They're going to make sure that I don't see your nastiness. So go on, knock yourself out. Keep them busy. All right, well, for the rest of you wonderful Sasquatch people, we have 2 encounters for tonight, one from Ohio and one from Oregon. And I'm ready to just go ahead and saddle on up and head on down into the valley for tonight's encounters. How about you? Yeah? Well, snackage up, get them ready. Let's go. Hi, Nance. This isn't a sighting exactly, but I wanted to give this to you anyway. Use it if you can. You can use my real name. I don't mind, 'cause I don't live there no more. We had a lot of snow back in 1993, 1994 winter time. And I mean lots of snow. Like the National Guard was bringing people their medicines and stuff because no one could go anywhere in my part of Ohio at times during that winter. I cannot recall if what I saw was in the 93 part of the winter or the 94 part of the winter. Our house at that time had a border with Symmes Creek. The face side of that house had a 3-season sunroom. I used it all year to have my morning coffee. It was built on a deck that had been there previously, so I was up a bit higher and looked out over the yard that went down to the trees that lined the creek. Sometimes in the morning or evenings I would see deer, fox, and all sorts of animals. In the wintertime, I could see their tracks, which I liked to look at and try to guess what animals were coming up near the house. I'm sitting there one morning, and I'm looking across the yard down to the trees down by the creek, and I'm seeing all these prints. They come up from the trees down by the creek, came up to my yard shed, circled it, and then walked across the yard and back down to the creek. At first, I didn't really pay it much mind, but I looked a little more, and then I did pay it mind. I saw that there wasn't the hop or the shuffle marks that should be there going from one print to the other. The snow was really deep that day, and better than a foot deep as I recall, yet there was no drag mark across the snow top from one print to the other. I'm thinking about this, and then I see other things that make me think. The prints look even, not at all like a four-legged creature's diamond pattern of walking prints. Then they were almost right in front of each other. From print to print, it looked to be about a yard apart. Now, what can make prints that far apart in such deep snow, lift its foot cleanly out of the snow each time, and leave no drag marks across the top? I couldn't think of a single one. I went and got our bird-watching glasses out to get a better look. I just knew I had to be wrong about what I was seeing. But no, the only scuffing of the print was at the back or at the heel part. That looked sort of caved in, like the heel had rubbed hard while pulling itself out of the snow, or it was bending differently than when it went down into the snow to make the print. When I went out to look, I still didn't know what they might be prints of. My guess that morning was a rabbit that somehow was jumping straight up and bouncing down to the next hole is what did it. But I kept thinking, that didn't fit either. But it was all I had that morning I could think of. I even was thinking that might explain the way the back or the heel part was broke down, because that rabbit was coming back up out of the hole at an angle. The print at the bottom of the hole was wider than a rabbit would be and longer, but I was trying really hard to make a best guess that would fit. I am calling these prints, but they were really holes that were deep down in the snow. When I went out, it was 3/4 up to my knees. The snow, I mean. When I got back in the house and me and my wife looked from the sunroom together, you could see right where I had been in comparison to the other prints. Where I had been, there were great big drag marks from print to print, because I could not cleanly lift my whole foot up directly out of the hole, and I sure couldn't space them a yard apart without drags. I did not think at the time I was looking at anything that might be unusual, so no, I didn't go out and take photos. I did not measure or in any way document those prints. I only thought about them sometime later that spring, when I heard that someone down in Chesapeake was screaming that they had seen a Bigfoot down there. Well, that's right on my back doorstep, so to speak. They said that the Bigfoot was running up and down the creek howling that night. The very same creek that eventually ends up running right behind my house. That is when I started to wonder about those prints in the snow. I kept a better watch after that, but I never did see what might have left those prints. I do think of all the things that it might have been out there, and a Bigfoot might be the only thing possible. I can still find no animal that can leave single prints a yard apart, almost single file, and not leave a drag mark in the snow. After hearing someone said that they saw one near us like that, I listened all the rest of that year and probably the next 2, trying to hear one of them howling at night. I never heard anything, though. Once we got the internet, I started looking into Bigfoot. But it was a while before I started to find all kinds of reports and things that were happening over here in Lawrence County, or up the way in Vinton Furnace, Zaleski, Tar Hollow, or Wayne Forest north of where we were. Now I know. At that time I was living in Bigfoot Central, but I didn't know it then. Now we live in Arizona because of my wife's health. I miss the forests of Ohio. Thank you, Michael Cornett. In the 1970s, when I was growing up, we lived in the Rogue River area. Our house was fairly new at the time. We were on the west side of the Rogue River at the Big Bend there. Our yard ended at a small rise of land that was heavily forested. We were always hearing all kinds of weird animal noises out there, day, night, all the time. Back then it didn't seem like something big because it was just common to us growing up. But now I think back, and it probably was something big. Me and my little brother, who I always called Bub, would play out back in our yard most days. Our parents told us not to leave the yard and to never go into the trees back there, and we didn't. But turns out that things did come down from those trees to see us. I was about 9 when this happened, and my little brother was either 6 or 7 at the time, depending on the time of the summer, if he'd had his birthday, as I remember it. We had turned the hose on, and we were out there making our little mud city. We had our Tonka trucks and earth movers out. We had a large patch of the yard that we had routinely soaked with water just to have our own little mud pit to play in like that. This area was, by my mother's mandate, out in the furthest section of the yard so she didn't have to look at it. One day she pulled the yard hose out in a diagonal away from the house. Where that hose stopped is where our mud pit was allowed to be. I guess 50 feet from the house, or whatever the average hose length was back then in the 1970s. There was still probably the same distance from the mud pit to the trees at the back of the yard. We were doing the mud thing one afternoon when my brother said he needed to go in to use the bathroom. I said okay, thought nothing of it, and went back to planning my little mud city. When he came back out, I heard him walk up to me by the mud pit, but he stopped, and he didn't get down to play. I remember talking to him the whole time, and I'm digging a river through what was going to be my grand little mud city. Whatever I said to him, he either didn't hear or he didn't care to respond to me, because I remember being surprised when he started grabbing the shoulder seam of my shirt and tugging on me to try to get me to stand up. I was still talking when he was doing it. I stopped talking and I looked up at him, but he was looking past me to the trees. I said, "What's up, Bub?" And he whispered, "It's gonna get us. Let's go, now." I remember thinking, what's he talking about? There I was having a great time just smacking the mud all around, plowing my Tonka trucks through the mud. I was covered up to my elbows in mud. I had mud in my underwear from sitting in the mud with my shorts on. And let me say, when you're 9 years old, you know it's a good day when you have mud in your underwear. I was in little boy heaven. So what was his problem, I thought? What is going to get us out here? But Bub just kept looking past me, and I saw that he was starting to breathe hard. And without another word, he whirled and took off and ran back to the house, leaving me sitting there in the mud, wondering, what just happened? I finally wise up enough to think, maybe I'd better look over to where he had been looking. I did. There was nothing there. Being boys like we were, and brothers, well, I guessed he was just punking me. But when he didn't want to come back out and play at the mud pit at all, I wondered what the problem really was with him. He went in and he told Mom and Dad that there was a bear out there and that it had been watching us and that it was going to get us. I was so mad at him for saying that, because now I wasn't allowed to go out and play at my mud pit. I wasn't allowed to go out there at all unless Mom or Dad was with me. But Bub, well, he wouldn't budge. He would not tell them that he was telling a tall story, even though I did everything I could think of to make him say it. Whenever it would come up, he would swear that there had been a big bear standing up about to come over the fence when he came back outside. So I said, "Well, why didn't you yell at me when you came out and you saw it? If you were so scared, why did you come all the way out to the mud pit?" He said that he hadn't seen it until he was almost to the mud pit. He said he saw it because it moved out of the trees, then stopped, and then stepped back to just under the shade of the tree. We went round and round for a week or two about it. I was so mean to Bub. I deliberately broke his toys. I bullied him. I remember I once made myself a bowl of cereal, and then I poured out all the rest of the milk that was in the jug, so he couldn't have any. No cereal for him that morning, at least not with milk. Mom didn't understand why there was no milk, but I did. I think he knew what I did, but he didn't see it, so he couldn't rat on me. But I did all kinds of mean things to him like that. Anything I could think of to make him miserable, I did, because I was miserable. It was summertime, and I couldn't even play in my backyard hardly at all because of him and his stupid fantasies. Although, looking back, if I had paid attention to him, I would have seen how terrified he really was. Well, you already know what happened, right? There came that day that I was out there, and I saw it standing in the trees. It was standing as still as a tree. It was so still, and it matched the color of the tree trunk so true, I don't know how I saw it at all. My mom was out there and was sitting up near the house reading a book, and she had a little radio on that she was playing. Bub was doing something playing not far from her up near the house. But I had been out there at the mud pit on my own. I was working to rebuild my grand vision of a mighty mud city with a river running through it, and I was determined to do it by myself if I had to. And that is when I saw it out there in the trees. From memory, here's what I recall it looking like. It was all brown hair colored, the color of a cottonwood tree trunk, oval head shape, forward that seemed to slant backward. The brow seemed pulled down over the eyes, and the eyes seemed small to me, but a very wide mouth. Most of the face was all hair-covered, but I remember that the lips weren't. I recall them seeming like a black line going across the face. It seemed like it wanted me to do something. I remember thinking I was supposed to do something. It wanted me to do something. I was supposed to go to the fence. I was supposed to go over the fence. I was supposed to go over to it. We were going to be friends. Yeah, I was supposed to go to it. I would now say that it was 30 or 40 feet from me. Not to the fence line, but it wasn't back in the trees either. It was still standing there in the shade of the trees. Now, my memory might be faulty after all these years, and we left that property in 1982, so it's been a minute or two since I last saw the real distances between those things. I know, as time goes by, memories are usually all messed up, but I believe that I've had these exact same memories or impressions since the day it happened. They haven't changed at all. Now, I'm not going to guess height. It was just tall. But I was 9 years old then. The mail carrier looked tall to me. At some point or other, I yelled, I screamed, or did something to get my mom's attention, because I start hearing her scream. That much I remember. And I now realize that it had to have happened on a Saturday or a Sunday because my dad was home. When my mom started screaming, she ran into the house to get my dad. Yeah, she left me out there, mind you. She just left me and ran inside. But she went to go get my dad, and the next thing he came out with a baseball bat. I guess he was thinking there was some pervert out there about to steal his little boy or something. I guess my mom didn't say that it wasn't a guy out there. I don't even know what Mom said when she went in. Maybe he just heard her screaming and he grabbed the bat and came running. I don't even think they had guns back then, or bear spray. They might have, but I don't think so. I often wondered what would have happened if it had been a bear. I don't think my dad could have won with it against a bear with a bat. I didn't look back when my mom was yelling. This is where I really think there is truth in them being able to hypnotize or mesmerize you. Because only when I heard my dad did the spell get broken and I was able to look away from it. My dad was coming across the yard, and he was roaring like any bear. And then he stopped, just a few feet from me. Now I know that he was either very surprised, uncertain, or something, because he stopped, and he hesitated, and he lowered the bat. Then he came over to me, grabbed me, literally picked me up and threw me over his shoulder, and ran with me like I was just a small sack of potatoes. He had never done anything like that. When we got inside, I asked, "What was that?" Mom and Dad both said over and over, they didn't know. But it was that kind of moment when parents say stupid lies, and kids know they're lying. And that told the 9-year-old me that whatever they were lying about was something either very bad or very adult-only. And I was pretty sure it wasn't the adult-only type of lie. There's a lot more to the story about how I figured it all out and what it was out there, but it's kind of boring. I'll just say there's a reason that I voted for the levy several years ago to build a newer and bigger library where I now live. Libraries, they're the key to the freaking universe. And that's all I have to say about that. It was a while before we went back out there in the yard. And we did see that creature again, but at a lot more distance. I don't ever recall it coming so close again to the house. I do think they are drawn to children. I do think they hypnotize or mesmerize. Because here's the thing that I hadn't told anyone, and the thing that I didn't even realize until I was an adult. At that moment when I was locking eyes with it, I was feeling really okay with it, like we're going to be the best of friends. This is good. And it would really be okay if I just went over the fence to go play with it. I had no fear, and I should have, because I did when I first looked at it. And here is the other thing. While all of that was going on one side of my little tiny head, the other side of my little tiny head was telling me to stop. Don't go near the fence. It's dangerous. It's going to eat you. But guess which side of my little tiny head was going to win the argument? You bet. The side that said, go over the fence, let's play, let's be friends. The adult that I am now, with the memories I have, understands what was going on in that moment. And it makes me shudder because I believe that I narrowly missed becoming one of those kids that you see on a milk carton. I remember that thing's expression. Even from that distance, I remember those eyes and how they just looked at me like I was a lobster in a restaurant aquarium. People don't like me when I talk about this or this aspect of this encounter. And I mean, even people I don't even know. I've been called a liar. I've been called all kinds of things. But Bub remembers it too. My parents remembered it as well. My dad is gone now, and my mom has Alzheimer's. But until the last they could remember, they both remembered it, just like I do. Well, except for the mesmerized bit. Before my dad died, we did talk about it, and he tried those dumb adult lies on me one more time. And I was like, hello, Dad, I'm in my 30s. Stop the lying. Let's get real, Dad. That's what I said. And he did. Dad said that he knew the very second he came out and saw what it was. Well, he knew what it was. He'd heard about them since they had moved into Oregon in the late 60s. But he didn't think that they were something real, or that if they were real, that they would ever come near houses or deliberately near humans. But one summer day in the 1970s, he learned they are real and that they will come very near to houses, and they don't mind coming near humans. not even during daylight. We all also agree that on that day, Bigfoot was looking to kidnap me or Bub. For what purpose? Well, none of us want to speculate, but I doubt that it would have ended well for me. He, too, thinks that it was going to take me or Bub. Dad, that is. Mom thought so, too. We still played out back till we moved, but never without adults there. And for what it's worth, I never completed my big architectural dream of a huge mud city with a mighty river flowing right through the middle of it. And I have no one but Bigfoot to blame. Thank you, Morgan Stahlhaber. Well, thank you to both of you for sending those in. And as always, if you had an encounter that you'd like to hear narrated on this channel, please send it in to contact@buckeyebigfoot.com so we can all listen and share in your experience. Again, I do apologize for the way I sound. I didn't dream it would still be going on this long or that I would still have so much more dental to do. But thanks for bearing with me, folks. It's going to be a few more weeks, but in the end, it will all be worth it. And just in case you're curious, we are correcting bad things that happened when I was a child in a car accident that was never addressed when it should have been. All right. Well, that's it for tonight. I don't have a lot of other chit-chat. Some nights there's a lot to say, others not so much. And this is one of the others. Again, thanks for stopping by. And don't worry, we'll all be meeting up again real soon. Until then, always remember, absence of proof is not proof of absence. Thanks for listening, everyone. Now, Bigfoot says he knows you weren't going to leave without hitting that subscribe button. Were you? Yeah, I didn't think so. Bigfoot says thank you.